Alrighty, here we are on lesson 1%. So in the opening exercise, we are just matching the percents with the correct sentence clues. So the first thing I'm going to do here is in the side of the table, I'm going to label each of these with a letter, just so we don't have to draw lines. So go ahead and letter all the way down, A through H. Right? And then we'll go ahead and start matching them. So the first one says, I am half of a half. So we know that half of 1/2 would be 1/4. And that would be 25%. So this one matches up. That'd be A. The next one says, I am less than 1/100th. Alright, and 1/100th is just 1%. And it's less than that. So that means that we would pick letter H, 1/2%. The third one says the chance of birthing a boy or a girl. So we know that's a 50-50 chance, so that's 50%. So that would be B. And the next one says I am less than a half but more than a fourth. So somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 we would need so let's see, a fourth is 25%, right? And we need more than that, so we would have C, 30%. The next one says, I am equal to 1. And if you're looking down the list here, the only thing that would equal 1 would be 100%, which is F. And then the next one says, I am more than 1, so we need something bigger than 100%. And that would be G, 300%. And then we have I am a tenth of a tenth. So if we multiply 1/10 times 1/10, we get 100th, which would be 1%, so that would be D. And then the last one, I am less than a fourth, but more than a 100th. And the last one we have is E, 10%. Alright. The next part says, what is the process when converting a percent to a fraction? So when we do this, you need to write the percent over 100 and simplify. Alright. And then at the bottom it says, what is the process when converting a percent to a decimal? So the first thing we need to do, step 1, is write the percent over 100. And then once you do that, there's two things you could do. So you could either divide the numerator by the denominator, and you can do that just by hand or in the calculator. Or your other option is just to read that fraction out loud. And since it's over 100, then we know how to write that using our decimal places. So I always say that reading the fraction out loud is a great way to convert it to a decimal. Okay? So if you flip over to the next page, on example 1, we're going to convert these percents into fractions and then into decimals. So the first one, we have 37.5%. I'm going to draw a line down the side here to separate a bit. Alright, so 37.5 would be 37.5 over 100. But we can't have decimals within our fractions. So we need to multiply by 10, so we'd get 375 over 1,000. And then we need to simplify, and we could start by dividing by 25 first. And that would equal 15/40. And then if we simplify that even more, we would get 3/8. Right? And then if we're going to convert to a decimal, I'm going to pull up my calculator. We can just plug it into the calculator. 3 divided by 8, and that gets us 0.375. Next one, we have 100%, so this would just be 100 over 100, and that just equals 1. So our decimal, of course, would then just be 1. Alright, next we have 110%, so we'd have 110 over 100. We simplify, start with canceling some zeros here, we get 11 over 10. And this is the same thing as 1 and 1/10. And that makes it easier for us to write our decimal. We know it would be 1.1. I don't know why my decimal keeps moving. Try that again. Okay. Next we have 1%, so that would just be 1 over 100, and we can't simplify that anymore. And then our decimal, if we read it, it's 1/100th, so it would be 0.01. And the last one we have 1/2 over 100, so we can just keep it as a complex fraction for now, 1/2 over 100. And if you do 0.5, let's see, clear this out, 0.5 divided by 100, you will get 0.005, so here we have 0.005. Okay, so same thing down below here, we're just filling in the chart based off of what they tell us. So let's start with the middle row actually. So when we go from a decimal to a percent, you're going to multiply by 100, which is the same thing as moving the decimal to the right 2 times. So you would get 2.5%. See the decimal in there. Alright, and now if we want to write it as a fraction, if we read it out loud, this is 25 hundredths, oh sorry, thousandths. As I can't get this to write in here. It's 25 thousandths, and then when we simplify, we would get 1/40th. Alright, and the next one, if we do 1 divided by 8 in the calculator, 1 divided by 8, we get 0.125. Again, if we move that decimal over 2 places, we would get 12.5%. And that's it for that row. Alright, now to go from a percent to a decimal, we're going to do the opposite with our decimal. We're going to move it 2 times to the left, so we would have 3.5. Alright, and then if we wrote it as a fraction, we would start off with 350 over 100, and if we simplify that, we would get 35 over 10 when we cancel out some zeros. And then one more simplification, we would get 7/2, and that's another way you could also get your 3.5. Okay, so there's a few ways to go back and forth between. Whenever you're going from a decimal to the percent, you move decimal twice right. And if you're going the other way, you move decimal twice left. Okay, so that's just one trick you could use. Alright, but that is all we're going to do for this lesson. So if you have any questions, just save those for class tomorrow, and then we'll do some more practice all together.